personally, I look at some of our customers and I go, you would save countless millions of dollars a year if you would just tweak your maintenance program here or there.
Welcome to Diesel Stories, where we sit down with professionals across the industry to hear about their journey. I'm Jacob Finlay, along with Chris O'Brien. Today, we're talking with Don Doty, Vice President, Roadside Operations and Vendor Relations at FleetNet America. All right, Don, welcome. Great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I think, and we got Chris here too.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Don, I think we first met 2 or 3 years ago, first over email, and since then we've had the chance to meet in person, and it's great to have you on.
Likewise, I've enjoyed getting to know you and your company and the people that work for you. So the partnership has been enjoyable.
So we want to get to kind of your diesel story, basically how you got into the industry, but maybe back up a little bit. So you guys are in the Charlotte area. Is that where you're from originally, Don?
No, I'm a transplant from the Midwest. I grew up really in Nebraska and spent a good part of my life there. And kind of grew up in a middle of the road kind of family that, learned how to do things for themselves because they didn't necessarily always have the money to go out and, put on a new roof in the house or windows or whatnot. My dad was a technician and ran a shop, and from some perspective, the whole maintenance and mechanical world was bound to be. And so just kind of grew up around shops and race cars and trying to figure out how to do things that, to make our lives better. Like I said, whether that be rebuilding our house or fixing our cars or whatnot. And kind of in some ways, it's a thing of the past, but pretty pleased with the way I grew up. And again, it's a different world today, but it's been fun.
Now, Don, did you grow up in the city, or were you out in the farm country?
Yeah, we're part of Nebraska.
So I grew up in a town called Grand Island, Nebraska. It's I think today it's got a population of around 60 or so thousand people, but it's surrounded by a rural area. So you can be, while it's by definition a city, not a large one, you can be anywhere in that city within 15 minutes, and you can be on a farm or, fishing or hunting in the country or just hanging out in the country within, 15, 20 minutes of your back door. So we got a good mix of both rural and city, if you will, and a lot of the rural towns around that particular city kind of saw that town as, their destination for retail and restaurants and whatnot. So a lot of the smaller towns and rural folks were always traveling in and out of that city.
We have some friends out there. They raise cattle for feeding their family. And did you ever get into that where you had animals that were raised for feeding the family or buying?
I didn't per se directly, but growing up, I worked with. My mom had a large social network, and she had many farmers that were. She was in contact with on a regular basis, and somehow I'd always get volunteered to go help rogue beans or detassel or lay irrigation pipe or do things that are pretty normal to rural kids and somewhat normal to people that aren't far from the farm, but are going to be pretty abstract or way out there for city folk. But my father-in-law is a seed corn salesman out there. he works directly with farmers and ranchers, and so I know that world well, but I've not directly been employed in it, or I shouldn't say directly employed. I have in small jobs and whatnot in my youth, but I don't know if that makes any sense to you all.
Yeah, makes sense. So your dad worked as a technician in a shop. Your mom, did she work?
She did. She worked out of the home, and she actually worked in a bar and lounge restaurant kind of thing where a lot of locals would come in, and that's why I say her social network was pretty wide.
Right.
And so that's I often got volunteered to do odd jobs and different things for all kinds of folks. Putting in sprinkler systems, that was something I did for a number of summers, and my mom would volunteer me to do that for different people on the side. And
for money or just for
for money.
Okay, nice. So your parents lining up work for you. Did you have any time for sports in high school?
I did. I played football for a time, but really my love for sport was in the sport of wrestling. So I wrestled from a young age and all the way through high school, and was later recruited to wrestle and just didn't take that step. It's a difficult sport to do at any stage, and it's even more so in college because you really got to be committed to it, and the 24/7 nature of dieting and training and whatnot doesn't work well for drinking beer and chasing girls in college.
Right.
Well, there's one thing that's for certain: in high school, you did not pick a fight with a wrestler. You get yourself hurt pretty quick.
They're strong and they're grumpy because they can't eat anything.
They will throw you on the ground very quickly. Learned my lesson in the 9th grade.
So Don, how many siblings did you have? Where'd you fit in?
I was the oldest of two. We were a relatively, family of 4. My sister's she's 5 years younger than me. So while we're close, we definitely were different age, and we didn't really run around in the same people so much. And she was usually the bratty sister that was tagging along and later would go tattle on me for this or that. And that's how I remember most of our relationship through our youth. But
is that all our
we've grown. What's that?
I think that's all our sisters. I'm not sure it's just your sister.
Yeah, this is true. But growing up with that kind of an age difference, you just feel like, black and white in terms of your relationship and things that you have in common or don't have in common. And so we kind of had a rocky relationship. I mean, for in a lot of ways, but we loved each other and still do. And our relationship's got much better as we've aged. So
yeah, it's amazing how that happens when you actually become adults and you can talk to your siblings on a different level.
Yeah, you've got more common ground with kids and the demands of career and homes and all that stuff. And you go, oh, wow, the stuff our parents were doing was a lot harder than we thought. And so, yeah, it is kind of amazing how you grow up and think about things differently.
So you turned down the wrestling offer. And did you end up going to college? What'd you do there?
Yeah, I studied business in Nebraska, and I worked actually through that time at a Peterbilt dealership. My dad had some connections, of course, that
was that
that's really. I'm sorry.
Was that in Lincoln?
No, that too was in Grand Island. I went to school in Kearney and Grand Island both later. As I was going to school, and just commuted back and forth.
Gotcha.
Actually had, at a young age, I had a child, and so it changed the way. So I grew up a different way than most people. So I had to not only support a child, but also, become an adult and go to school and do the things that you hope you don't have to do all at once. But in a lot of ways, it defined me, and I'm very happy with the outcome and the challenges that I had to go through. But yeah, to get back to the Peterbilt thing, I worked at a Peterbilt dealership, and partly because I had to have a job and I had to make things happen, and I started there really as a guy that was cleaning floors and painting walls and taking care of the warranty room as parts would get replaced on trucks. They got to be inventoried and cleaned up to a degree, and inventoried and boxed up as best they can, and all that stuff. And that was I did that for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then transitioned from that into a technician, and I worked a second shift technician job for a number of years, and then later transitioned into the parts side of the dealership. And so in a lot of ways, I had an opportunity to do, outside of selling trucks, I had an opportunity to do kind of everything you might do in a dealership environment over about a 5 or 6 year period. Wow. That I look back on fondly and connect to even today, a lot of those experiences and things, I can use in my career as I sit here today at FleetNet.
Wow. How was it working in a dealership and going to business school at the same time? Did anything drive you crazy about, man, these guys need to run this thing different, or was it just kind of reinforcing it?
I was still learning. I mean, I would say if I look back on it now, yeah, there's a lot of inefficiencies. Back then we were still punching paper clocks, and we'd punch in on, and I'm sure lots of people do it today. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just there's a lot better ways to do it. We were punching paper clocks, and if we had a work order, that work order, you might have 5 or 6 line items to it. And so we're going to go and do our job and then run to the time clock and punch the time clock. And so we can punch out of one job and punch into the next job and then go work, and just a lot of wasted efficiency just in that function alone. That I know your system and other systems have since alleviated a lot of that. But yeah, we worked a lot off paper, and I can remember going, gosh, there's clearly better ways to do that. Even in the parts world, all of that was, somebody would look up a part and go find the part and write the part down on a pick list and a quantity, and that was associated with that work order. And then, at some point when the work was done, they would some other person would grab the parts pick list, and they would marry that to the work order and type all of that into a computer, and then again marry the labor, all the time punches, and all that kind of would get put together in a final ticket, and just you kind of look at that and go, wow, that's a lot of back of the office kind of stuff, but there's clearly some margin being lost, and
so you're thinking that
process. Oh yeah, but so you're confined to the constraints that you're set with, or the rules of the road, so to speak, and
right.
But yeah, it's interesting to kind of look back at it. I'd love the opportunity. I haven't stepped foot in that dealership in a really long time, but something tells me that if I did, there'd be a good many changes, but a lot of that stuff would probably still be true today. Okay. May even have the same coffee pot. There's a distinct smell of coffee and grease and donuts.
Right.
Just kind of burned into my mental vernacular.
Right. Totally.
That is too funny. So did you get into buying your own toolbox? You got the huge arsenal of tools.
I luckily did not have to, thankfully, because that was not, my father's friend was able to help me out, and I was able to kind of work out of his box. And there were some things I had to purchase, but, it was always, it was generally always thought of as a temporary thing for me, or a stepping stone. And at that time, I didn't necessarily have a desire to work in the industry. Actually, I was trying to work my way through school and get into banking and finance, which I later did, and determined that I didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would, and came back into the transportation services industry not long after being in that world. So I guess to some degree, it kind of, for me, it got in my, I don't know that it was ever not in my blood. If I think about, being, young, even in diapers, I remember my father was crew chief of a race car team. And I remember he'd work long days, and him and his race car buddies would go and roof houses to pay for the race car during the summer months. And then once it got dark, they'd go work on the race car till whoever knows what time in the morning. And he'd get back up and go to work at 7 in the morning. How he did it, I have no idea, outside of his love for it. And I can remember being young and going to racetracks and all over the Midwest, and kind of living that life. And so not knowing that it was in some ways being ingrained on me, and again, so now here I am, vice president of a company that operates in both US and Canada. And I look back and go, that's funny how that worked. And I wouldn't take any of it back. I love it. I enjoy what I do, and the people we serve, and the challenges that we solve. And, I think in a lot of ways, all of those experiences that I've just talked about, and clearly there are more, kind of help give me my own education that might be beyond anything you might be able to get out of school, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, just growing up a little bit similar to you, just the purchasing of tools. You're fortunate to put yourself through school, and if you had to buy your own tools to make a living, it's just amazing how much money gets funneled into the tools in a shop if the shop doesn't provide them. So, yeah, it's fortunate that you had a resource there, because that's a strain in itself. If that's your way to make a living, it could be very costly.
Yeah, I would say that's a very abnormal reality that I was, or opportunity that I was given to not have to do that. So, because you're exactly right. You're making whatever you make in those days, or even today, and a good percentage of that is going, especially as you're starting out, is going right out the door, and investment in tools, so you can be the technician that you want to be, and have the tools that you need to have to be efficient. Because as you both know, or as you all know, the technician's pay is directly associated with their efficiency, and got to have the right tool to perform the job, or just makes it so much easier in a lot of ways.
Okay. So you graduate in business, and you get out of commercial repair altogether. And did you say it was banking first? Banking and finance?
Yeah, actually, was very motivated to get into the mortgage industry, and knocking on a number of doors while I was at the dealership, trying to find a way to do that. That was in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
When it went through its first boom, if you will.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. It was a much different pace. It was behind a desk. It was working with people. At that time,
it was just coffee and donuts, no grease. Right.
There you go. At that time, I don't know. It was a different world. It was in some ways, it was a little bit of Wild West, and the people that were, at least in my purview, that were making the most money were, I don't know. They were doing things maybe not the way I would like to have done them.
Yeah. You ever seen The Big Short?
I have. Yeah.
Was that accurate?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, again, I was only directly employed in that world for a little over a year, and it was 100% commission job. And I think it's kind of designed in a way that sets you up for, I want to go out and, be a shark. And
Right.
that didn't necessarily fit with my nature. I mean, I'm competitive and I can go make things happen, but I don't necessarily like to put people in a sitting back and saying, hey, I'm going to put this person in this house, but I can clearly see they can't afford it.
Right.
But I don't care, because it means I'm going to make money, and this is how much money. And it just wasn't something. I was always in competition with my morals and ethics, and not that I was doing anything unethical.
You're just
It didn't.
barraged, basically. You're constantly having to make the good choice over and over again.
Yeah. So consequently, I didn't make a whole lot of money in that field. And I tried and tried and tried, and I tried for a good solid year, and finally I said, you know what, this isn't working the way I wanted it to work. And at that point, it was out of necessity that I said, okay, I gotta get a real job. And I picked up a phone and called a friend that I'd known for a long while, and he owned a business, and pretty significant business in the Midwest, and said, hey, I need a job.
And all this time you're still in Nebraska, right? Still in Garden Valley?
Yeah, same city.
Gotcha.
So I ended up getting a job. They owned an operation, and maybe some of your listeners would be able to figure it out if they do the homework, but they own some truck stops in the Midwest, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, South Dakota, and some convenience stores in that same region, but also some over-the-road repair facilities, and actually had a company that was a tanker dealer and manufacturer, and a trucking company. So I actually started in that world in the fuel side of the business. They bought and sold their own fuel and transported their own fuel to their convenience stores and truck stops, but also did it for some of their competitors. And so I got to learn kind of the fuel and trucking side of the equation. We were buying and selling fuel on, the public exchanges, and we were also pretty early on in that world. We were involved with all the ethanol plants in the Midwest and the biodiesel plants. They've got significant needs for natural gas, and of course we were hauling natural gas in, and we were taking the product that they were producing out, and then mixing it into our own supply and other supply as part of a environmentally friendly fuel.
You guys doing
and it also
you guys doing like fuel hedging?
We were doing hedging, and it was a pretty interesting operation, and large operation, really. I think when I was there, they had 11 truck stops, and most of those were pumping between 1 and 2 million gallons of diesel a month to commercial, to trucking companies. So I spent probably 4 or so years directly in that world and the fuel side of that business, and then transitioned into an operational role there where we were upgrading truck stops, the technology that runs the fuel desk and the diesel islands, to include the pumps and concrete and piping and tanks and all that. And spent a number of years doing that, and all of the challenges of that world. And then all within the same company, just because it was such a privately owned family company, but very diverse in terms of the business segments and industries that it belonged to. So I got the ability to kind of jump and hop around in the different pieces of the business, which also I really look back on that phase of my life as another very I'm very thankful for that opportunity because I got to learn so much about business. I mean, that's really where I learned about business. If you really get down to it, just because there's so many different industries and so many different demands and opportunities in each one of those business segments. So I'm fond of that.
So you must have been there through the 2008 downturn.
I was.
Did you guys do okay on the hedging side of things, or did that kind of catch us by surprise?
We actually weathered that pretty well. At the time, those truck stops, we took a pretty conservative approach to hedging and purchasing of fuel and contracts. So we were positioned pretty well, and those truck stops, I don't know how first you or your audience is with those, but they produce cash like crazy. Just the outflow or the output, I should say, of diesel fuel and gasoline, those high volume travel center locations, and the com checks and the T checks and different things that are running through there to get cash into the hands of truck drivers and different things. It's an immense amount of cash. And so the business cash flowed itself very well. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that they went through like a delayed challenge. And part of it had to do with downsizing and selling off some of the travel center locations. It put a hit to their cash flow position, and then they started to go through a little bit more challenging time and had to learn how to operate the business with a little more efficiently, a little less from the seat of our pants kind of thing.
Loose, yeah. So when you say cash, I mean, so basically everything in the business is done at like a guaranteed margin. Like you wouldn't be selling your fuel at a loss, for example. If anything, you're just working to widen the profit.
Yeah, for the most part, there are some high volume deals where you're actually selling a lot of that fuel at cost plus margins and different things of that.
Yeah. Kind of like a parts markup. I mean, the cost is what it is, and you just mark it up from there, basically.
Right.
Yeah. The transient business is where, so just having some my wife's in the industry. And so having some background in it, if you own the fuel at just hypothetically $2 and the market is $3.50, you are like Don's saying, you're producing a lot of cash. But you also got to manage that cash, because you could end up, if you're not hedged right, you could end up being
on the opposite side.
Correct.
The market's $2.50, your cost is $3.50.
And if you put a contract together, to his point, if you put a contract together that's cost plus and they know cost is $2, well, then it's $2. There's no, and they're draining a large volume of your fuel. It could run your hedge out.
Well, that's pretty good. So Don, you go, you work as a technician, go to business school, get turned off by the mortgage industry. No offense to people who work in the mortgage industry, but that was a crazy time. That's when
absolutely.
That was the period when I bought my first house. No doc loan. It was crazy. Like I graduated from college, bought a house right away. Probably had no business doing that. But thanks to the craziness of that time, luckily I came out okay, but geez, it was definitely the Wild West. And then you get into fuel hedging and running the logistics of these truck stops, transportation. It's pretty good exposure, and you're still relatively early. I mean, even today, you're still relatively early in your career, right, Don? I mean, at that time I would have been in my mid and late 20s. I actually worked for that outfit for, I want to say 13, 14 years. And later, got exposed to some different aspects of their business and leading sales teams and operational side of the shop business. And so I'm very fortunate. And then I got to be around just some really good business people, whether it be folks that were employed by that company or people that we had relationships with. Because of the size and scope of that outfit,
their tentacles were all across the U.S. and we engaged with some really good business people. And so I had that to lean on, and I had some really good mentors that I grabbed out of those business relationships, and kind of use those guys as people, as sounding boards and coaches, career coaches to a degree. I still talk with a lot of those folks today and value their opinion. Whenever I'm in a position where I might not have the answer, or maybe I know the answer to the solution, but it's complex and I want to talk it out, sound it out, and hear some feedback.
Yeah. It's okay. So you worked in all these areas. What would you say the hardest area was to work in, like from technician all the way through to, leading a sales team?
That's a great question. They're all hard in their own way. The fuel business was so cutthroat and commodity driven that, you just really had to have your A game on. The technician side of the equation is difficult because it's demanding of your body, and you're working in different climates and different equipment, and your knowledge has to be high, or your ability to get the information you need to solve the problem needs to be at your fingertips. So I don't know, it'd be fair to single one out. I say they're all difficult in their own way. Being a leader in sales, not necessarily being a sales guy. I'm more of an operations kind of guy. Learning that process was fun. I mean, we grew from the Midwest, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, in 2008 when an outfit based in Utah had some financial troubles. They were also operating some truck stops across the country, or repair facilities across the country, that they went through a bankruptcy, and we were able to acquire their shop locations all across the country, and that put a number of challenges on us. One, we went from being regional in scope and size to being national overnight, and that was issues with, we don't know who these customers are, we don't know whether they're credit worthy, we don't know if they don't pay us, we don't know how to go get our money, where
right.
A lot of that was true and consistent in our normal operation. So number one, we had to figure out how to absorb all these locations, which were triple digit growth from a revenue and a location perspective for us. And then we needed to assimilate them into our program and our way of doing things. And I wasn't so much lead on that, but respecting the folks that did that job. That was a difficult job, going into locations, taking them over, and releasing the employees and rehiring them after drug screens, and saying that, here's the new manual, here's the way you got to do things, so on and so forth. And
I didn't
realize,
I didn't realize you guys did that. I mean, I know exactly who you're talking about. I didn't realize, and we don't have to say names, that's fine. That's a huge undertaking. So you guys tackled that. It's hard to run a repair shop, let alone a national network. Hardly anybody has pulled that off, even to this day, like a national network of commercial repair shops. It just isn't done because it's hard.
It's very hard. Yeah. So we did that. And then, to the extent that you got to bring in your own systems, and then now all of a sudden you gotta know the customer in places that you've never been before.
Right.
And you've got to figure out, what are you going to do from an AR perspective, accounts receivable, and credit. Are you going to continue to try to run that with your own people and your own systems, or are you going to outsource that? We chose to outsource that and bring in a company to help us manage that, and that gave us the ability to have kind of a national account, if you will, across all our businesses. And so I was instrumental in putting that into place, and then building a sales team out that would then be able to use that national account program in those facilities to go to market and try to capture business from fleet customers and local and regional fleet operators.
That's cool. So you guys were operating, so you had your own truck stops, and then you're operating commercial repair facilities on the property of other companies' truck stops.
Correct. And our own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were landlord to ourselves and leasee to others.
To competitors, basically, almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. Jeez. I had no idea, Don. This is crazy. So,
yeah.
All right. So how do you get from the Midwest to FleetNet?
Great question. It's a little bit obscure, but that same organization in the Midwest that I worked for had a relationship, a long-standing relationship with a marketing organization that I would describe them as a co-op of truck stops, convenience stores, and repair companies. And that particular company really acted, this is probably not fair to the company, but acted a lot like an Ace Hardware organization or a co-op where they owned the truck stop or the repair facility or both. Maybe there's both on a single property, were owned by a family or a small business, and they wanted to operate their business as they did, or with some standards that resembled, a national chain, but didn't necessarily have the resources or the fortitude to do it on their own. But then also to have a sales and marketing arm that had national presence and a feel to the customer. So that organization was able to employ through membership fees to all of those others. They employed a pretty sizable sales team that was responsible for fuel and maintenance sales with fleets. Mm-hmm. And the organization that I had worked for had opted to make a change in the way we did that. Rather than doing it internally with our own people, we thought we would join forces with that organization, and the two are better than one kind of thing, and we'd be able to join our locations in with their locations and really take over the world, so to speak. And probably not the best way to say it, but that was the kind of the design. And so through that opportunity, I was given a chance to be a leader in that organization and lead the efforts.
So you worked for the co-op for a while?
I did.
Gotcha.
I did. And I was, trying to assimilate, the shops that I had just been working for into a network of shops that were independent, operated, mom and pop like shops. And so the cultures were quite different. One of more of a corporate culture, and the other more of a family entrepreneurial kind of approach. And those at times clashed, and there were challenges that you had to fight through. So I was asked to step up and be someone that was going to lead those efforts on behalf of both organizations. And I took that opportunity, and I was at that point able to work from home and travel and see these shops and try to bring them into more closely into a standard that would be recognized by a truck driver or a company that might engage them in Pennsylvania and later in Texas and later in California, but it would be all some consistency in the way that they were served. And that was also challenging. You get lots of successful people in their own right that have a way of thinking that, well, this is the way I was successful, and this is the way I want to do things. But you've got to convince people that there's a bigger purpose, and here's why, and this is the way we'd like for you to do it. And that's very challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I mean, you're trying to do essentially you're trying to organize them into what's essentially like a large company feel and get all the synergies from a large company, but you have all these different personalities and opinions you have to wrangle. It almost, I mean, say you have 500 of those truck stops competing against one company that runs 500 truck stops, you're at a disadvantage because you have that extra, I guess, burden of having to get everybody coordinated and on the same page. You got many.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
More than relationships. You got to have business plans. You got relationships. All right.
Yeah. Go, Chris.
But that's your first taste of working from home. So were you traveling suitcased all the time, or were you working from home, 3 days a week, traveling a couple of days a week, or what was the environment?
I had been well traveled prior to that, so I knew the travel side of the equation. What I hadn't done was, and typically that would be, be out of the office for 3 days, maybe a full week at a time, and come back and be at the office, or later working from home for a week to catch up on different things and do this or that. But you're right; it's a good question. My first experience with going from an office that I would say conservatively had, maybe 300 or 400 people in it, to myself and my dogs was a dramatic change.
You like that, or
that's right?
Some people thrive on it. Yeah.
It was difficult at first because I didn't really know how to act. I'm a guy that's driven and competitive, and because of that, I kind of need to see people so that I can compete with them. I know that sounds terrible, but and then when you took that away from me, I went, well, no one's seen me do all this good stuff, and now what? And so that, and the absence of the interruptions, people come by your office and saying, hey, what about this or that? And when you're not there in front of them, they don't always find the answer on their own, but they're more likely to try to go and do that rather than come ask you or interrupt you.
Be like an interruption factory, right?
Yeah.
It is. And so, I was able to, early on, I was able to do, I kind of got the feeling that like an 8-hour workday at a home office was like a 14-hour workday at the office.
Yeah.
And so I was able to be a whole lot more efficient and get more things done. But then also those lulls in between, where it would normally be interrupted, or maybe a meeting or whatever, I didn't really at first know how to work with that time. And so it was challenging, but I got to where I had a pretty good pattern. I was disciplined. I was up, and I would shower and dress just like when I was working from, just dressed, not necessarily like I was at an office, but I'd get up and do the whole routine just like I was going to the office, and be at my desk at 7:30. What I enjoyed about it when I worked from home was that, I could largely have most, if not all, of the work I needed to be done by 3:00. I was able to go and walk or ride a bike and pick my daughter up from school, and maybe we'd ride down to a gas station, get some candy for her, or go to Dairy Queen, come back home and put another hour or thereabouts in at work, and really still be more effective than most people are at an office.
Yeah. Totally.
So, but it took a good probably 6 months for me to adjust to that. But after I adjusted, I did enjoy it, and I miss it today. And that's what, with the pandemic, or our business, we employ about, today at the company I work with FleetNet, about 300 or so employees, and 97% of those today are remote.
Really?
Yeah.
Because the pandemic.
Where remote. What about all the big video boards on the wall and stuff? How do they? You guys have all that?
They're still there, and we still watch them. The people that are here, I spend. I'm able to kind of bounce back and forth. I'm kind of doing. At one point, it was kind of like 3 days in the office, 2 days at at home. Now more and more it's getting to where I'm more in the office most of the time, but I can pop a day at home, or even a morning at home, and come into the office, and I enjoy that. I'm able to multitask and get some things done, both for work and at home.
So you're there, then so you land at FleetNet. You've been there for a few years now.
Yeah, it's actually, I was at the outfit I was telling you about previously. I one of those deals where I wasn't necessarily looking for a job when this one came about, but it was a great opportunity, and I was pained to make the decision that I made to leave the organization I was at and the people I had known for a long while, and also had to kind of decide whether, at the time I was also calculating how was I going to move my family of four, including myself, across the country from Nebraska to the East Coast, and what was that going to be like? And so a lot going on, and trying to figure that out at the same time that the child that I was speaking about earlier was just graduating high school. So from a timing perspective, that lined up, and my other child's much younger, and at the time was, younger. The younger they are, the more easily they adapt to that kind of change.
Right.
So
yeah. So your daughter had to graduate high school in North Carolina after the move.
No, my son is the one I'm speaking of. He actually was able to wrap up his senior year in Nebraska, and I gave him the choice that he could come with us, or you could stick around and stick to your normal plans, because I know this wasn't really in the plans from earlier. And said, you might think about coming with us. You can hang out in our house as long as you need to until you find your footing or whatnot, and go to school. And so he did, and he's actually going to graduate in first part of January. They're a little bit delayed because of this COVID stuff. Normally they would graduate in December, but he's about to graduate from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte with a finance degree. And so pretty excited about that. And but yeah, my daughter was much younger. There's an 11-year difference between them, and she at the time was, I think, either in the second grade or just going into the second grade. I'm kind of fuzzy on the math, but like I say, she adapted to, like, barely missed a beat.
Yeah.
And for him, in his case, it was all new to him, and he was exploring a new world. And so it was good for everybody. Honestly, my wife probably struggled with it the most, because she didn't immediately go into the workforce, and daughter's going to school, son's going to school, and I'm going to work, and there's nobody around, and you don't know anybody. And so the first year was pretty challenging from a personal perspective, but we made it through it, and we love it out here. The weather's a whole lot different than Nebraska. I'm miss and love Nebraska in its own way, but out here I still have the seasons. They're a little bit muted. Certainly winter is muted.
Yeah,
and there's
more trees out there.
More trees. What's nice about North Carolina is that you can, especially where we're located, you can be at the beach in 3 hours, or you can be in the mountains in 2, and you kind of got the best of both worlds. Or you can, North Carolina is well known for its waterfalls and parks and things of that nature. So you can get out in nature and see a lot of things.
So what would you say that, I know you're still early overall in your career, but you got in to diesel repair super early, I guess late 90s, right? Yeah. 2000s. So have you noticed any kind of seismic shifts in the industry since you first got in?
Yeah, I mean, the trucks have gotten much more complex than they were even when I first got in. I remember when they made the big jump, Caterpillar did, to an ACERT motor, and that was a large transition. Then they transitioned again a couple different times over a 10 or 15 year period. And ultimately the trucks are just getting more and more complex. As everybody knows, that trying to find technicians is a chore at best. And ones with the kind of knowledge and experience that you need are not readily available, and
wasn't so much
workforce
like
has changed.
Wasn't so much
right.
like that back when you started. Yeah.
Right.
What about, here's a question, Don, on maintenance. We've noticed that, dealers in both heavy and medium and light are going to ECM regulated intervals. So for like a wet service or an oil change,
instead of engine hours.
Yeah. Or just even they're actually just doing it by ECM, by wear. They're doing sensor wears.
Right.
So like we've always seen where, like just in my personal life, we have a Jeep and we have a diesel truck, and I know the diesel's ready at 11. It don't matter what the ECM is, that stuff's coming out at 11. And the Jeep following it, it's 72 or 7,400. We're dropping oil. But I recently was, some folks were recently talking about doing strictly ECM wet services. And are you seeing the industry move toward the ECM dictates the services, or are you guys still running or predicting maintenance based on hours and miles?
We're predominantly in the hours and miles world. I have not, that's actually new to me, but keep in mind my focus here at FleetNet is more on the emergency roadside equation. We do have the maintenance, preventative maintenance business unit within our walls as well. And they've got a little bit different clientele and a little bit different approach.
They're downstairs, or their empty desks are downstairs, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I don't subscribe to it just personally. I just recently heard it, and I thought, well, are you guys rubbing nickels to save pennies? Like, what are we doing here with going for ECM if we're within a couple hundred miles? Because if you take it to an ECM level, I'd rather be ahead of it than take it all the way until the ECM says, hey, this oil's done. And I don't know if there's any money to save doing that. And since that's just my opinion on the whole thing, if for whatever it's worth, if you hear about it and hear more on it, let us know.
Yeah,
I think what's most interesting, this isn't new. To me, it's always interesting to get inside the head of a trucking company and understand why they have the maintenance schedules that they have. And some are really good about being ahead of the game. They understand that a good preventative maintenance program prevents unplanned repairs. And I think, and it's somewhat backwards for me to say that in the role that I'm in, but I think I have a lot of respect for those organizations that do that. And I think it makes sense to me that I would rather pay now. I would rather do the pay me now than pay me later thing. That way I can control it, and I've got better cost controls, and I just feel better about that and more proactive. It's something that it's just better controlled, for lack of a whole lot of better other ways to say it. Then and we have clients on both sides of the spectrum and some in the middle. And, we go to those ones that are on the far extreme that don't have great maintenance programs and preventive maintenance, or maybe don't have them at all. And we try to present to them why they should. And it's hard for me to understand in a lot of ways why they don't do that, or why they're not more proactive.
For you guys, it's almost tough because you do, like you said, the preventive maintenance side, and then you oversee the emergency breakdown stuff. So the better the preventive maintenance, the fewer the emergency breakdowns, right? You get okay with that, obviously, because it helps your customers. But do you guys ever run into any issues with that?
Again, we serve at the pleasure of our customers, and however they ask us to do that, we're going to try to do it. But personally, I look at some of our customers and I go, you would save countless millions of dollars a year if you would just tweak your maintenance program here or there. And we do make that consultative approach to all our clients, but we can't make them do it, and they may have constraints that we don't understand or whatever. But Yeah, it's times it's challenging because you can see clearly what needs to be done to impact the customer and their cost position. And you tell them, and for whatever reason, they don't do it, and that's the tough part.
Yeah, makes sense.
Reconciling that can be difficult in your own mind.
Yeah, if you're especially depending on who's responsible for the uptime, or if you're responsible to keep emergency repair costs to a certain threshold. Maybe we're under contract with you, and it's hey, don't let it go over $1 million, but I'm not committed to preventative maintenance. That could be a bad recipe right there.
Done.
Yeah, or
oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, or fleets that are operationally focused and they're not good to make their equipment available for maintenance. And the operations always wins out over maintenance, and they got that next load to run, and maintenance is just going to have to wait. Well, at some point, maintenance doesn't wait. It's going to come, and that's where you get back to that pay me now or pay me later thing.
Truck in the middle of nowhere with your driver down and your truck down. It's not what you want to do. And then 3-time repair costs.
Exactly.
Don, I know we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, but how, in your view, how do you think COVID has changed the industry permanently?
So, we've read some things, and we're seeing it impact our business as well. But the e-commerce and has really lit up, and it's really been dramatic this year, and even more so in the last, say, 3 months of this year, as everybody is, or more and more, I should say, both consumers and the business world is transitioning over to the e-commerce model and deliver to your door. So there's a whole lot more equipment out there that's serving that market, a whole lot more customers that are doing it.
The last mile
and
expectation
yeah,
for consumers. And there's a lot of pressure on these logistics companies to go faster. Yeah,
the Amazon effect has put pressure on everybody. They've got a great customer UI, and they got a great customer proposition that says we're going to try to get this to you, in 2 days or less, and in some cases the same day. And that's very difficult for anyone to execute, let alone Amazon. However, it's a lot easier when you're the most valuable company in the world to do that.
Right. Yeah.
You got a few dollars that you can throw at a problem. But yeah, that we've had a number of kind of odd things that get thrown at us lately with all kind of relating to e-commerce. We were talking a little bit before we got started here. It's, we get these opportunities that involve lots of vehicles or assets that, need some campaign done to it, and it needs to be done like yesterday. And
by campaign, you mean like a marketing campaign, or?
No, like a PM or an inspection campaign that they've said strategically, customer said, these particular units might be due an inspection, in this time frame, and we don't want to take those units out of service to do that during that time frame. So we're going to preemptively push those out. The option they have is either push those out or to do them earlier. And so they'll come to us and say, we want to do those earlier, and with some tight deadlines that we normally would not entertain. But you've got to figure out how to perform for your customer as your customer wants you to perform. And so we've had a lot of those challenges as of late, and they've been fun. We've been pretty successful in performing in that way, but also continuing to support our existing clientele, which is so important. If you take your eye off the ball, bad things can happen. And so just lots of pressures and challenges with e-commerce and final mile for sure.
What have you guys seen? You're over the vendor relations. What have you guys seen with the shops that are doing the repairs? Any permanent changes that you've noticed? Any trends because of COVID?
Yes and no. I'm going to say, we've been on a bend or a mission here for as long as I've been here, and to some degree before, in trying to get the industry to be more technologically advanced and open to using technology to solve or to do business, I should say. And so we've seen more people adopt that mode. I do think, individually, as I think about how I do business, just in my own world, nothing to do with maintenance or trucking, more and more companies that I do business with are either interacting with them through computer most of the time. And so I think we're all adapting, changing. I've read some things that say that people are adapting to e-commerce and technology 10 years faster than they normally would have if the pandemic had not happened.
Yeah.
It's difficult to really get a pulse on that from a vendor perspective because there's so many of them and so fragmented in terms of who's out there. And those today, I would say the environment is still such that those that don't want to adopt can hold out, that the time for that is shrinking. And I think time will tell, but this industry is going to be, it's going to have to adopt more digital and means and technology. And then, I think about electronic or vehicles, EVs, and I think about what change that's going to bring to our industry, and especially in our business. There's some discussion that some of those vehicles are touting 1 million miles without a breakdown. And I initial thought on that is I laugh at it. I don't know how that's ever possible, but you start to think about all the systems that don't exist in an electronic vehicle. There is no radiator, there's no coolant system, there's no after treatment, there's not even, in many of them, not even really a transmission. It's all direct drive. And clearly there's still tires and there's brakes and there's lights and there's things of that nature, but there may be something to the whole notion that the breakdown world is going to dramatically change. I also think that the type of technician that we're going to be looking for, the training is going to be, as those things get adopted, and it's not a if, but when, I think, as they become adopted, you're now talking about dealing with a quasi lineman rather than a technician, somebody, understands electricity in a way that, like say a utility lineman might
better understand it really well. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Just on just general dealerships, we're seeing some pickup and delivery services. Like some shops aren't, are you seeing more mobile technicians? I mean, obviously in emergency repair, you're going to see all of that's going to be mobile technicians, but are you seeing brick and mortar shops shift to a mobile technician platform to go to the customer? So there's not that engagement with the trucks being dropped off?
There are, one thing that we've seen, which doesn't directly answer your question, I acknowledge, but one thing that we also dealt with is that, shops are less inclined to get, and especially tow operators and shops that have to get inside a vehicle or have to have people ride with them. They're less inclined to do that. Not to say that most won't, but we've been encountered with some challenges where they said, you got 4 people in this broken down unit that needs to be towed 150 miles. And pre-pandemic, we probably would have stuffed them in our wrecker. We're not going to do that now. So what do you want me to do with these people? And so we got to figure out those challenges. And that's always at the time when that first happened, we go, well, what in the world are we going to do? Because in the urban areas, you got options that are, kind of publicly available, whether that be, mass transit or Uber or Lyft or something like that. But what do you do in, middle of Nebraska, at 2 a.m, where you don't see a porch light for 20 miles?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that creates some challenges that don't always have the immediate answer at hand.
Hey, Don, the last question I wanted to get to was actually about electric, and I know you're kind of touched on that, but how soon out do you think the tipping point is where we see, I guess, more electric semis purchased than non? I know right now, basically no one's buying them, right? There's been a lot of hype and so forth, but what's your sense? Like, what are you guys seeing over there? And is this going to be a thing?
I can tell you, we're seeing some of our clients purchase them today, and put them into service. And yeah, I think it's going to be a thing. I don't think it's going to be as widespread so quickly that maybe some say. I think it's probably 5 years out before it's prolific, or maybe not fully prolific, but more visible. But again, I'm seeing customers today, multiple customers purchase those, and we're having to figure out how to support those. And in most cases, it's tow it to a dealer, and then the dealer doesn't always know how to deal with it.
Right. We've been talking a lot with one of the OEMs, and one of the things they're convinced of is basically diversity. There's going to be electric will be a thing, but we won't see diesel go away. It'll be kind of a mixed bag, because there's specific applications where it kind of has to be diesel, or I guess there's a lot of work being done on diesel electric hybrids, even where the diesel engine is essentially generating electricity, which then runs the motors. Ceramic diesel engines, all kinds of stuff being worked on. So we'll kind of have to see where that comes together. But for a shop doing the repairs, it almost means you kind of like the lineman tech that you mentioned, Don. You got to have them, and you got to have the diesel techs, because it's going to be way into the future before you see diesel completely disappear.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's going to be here. I don't know that it ever disappears, but you will see. And I think you're right. I mean, that is a good way to say it. There's going to be some diversity in power plant and that sort of thing. And we're seeing some of that today. Not to the degree that the industry talks about, but it's there. And these large fleets that have natural gas and electric and diesel and other power plant options, they've got to support those too. And so some of the challenges that they're dealing with are interesting, because large organizations that have shop operations of their own, and how do they get that information out to them? It's interesting. Yeah, we got lots of challenges in front of us as we continue to move into the electric and otherwise kind of world.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's not an infrastructure. I remember, in 2010, we were speccing electric trailers for the reefer units. We were going to save fuel. We were going to plug them into the warehouse until we had to dig up the ground and get another dedicated line to the building. And it was about $1 million worth of electrical work that had to be done. And then the safety guy showed up and said, well, what if it's raining and the power strip is, the rig is plugged in? And so it started just dominoing out of control with safety and infrastructure issues. It's not just like you go buy a truck, it's electric and it works. It still has to have its power, its regeneration. And through that whole, you got to keep it in town. It has to have, limited limited miles it's going to drive, et cetera.
Yeah, it does seem like we're going to get to a tipping point at some point, but things like that have to be overcome, where the benefits have to outweigh the cost of massive infrastructure changes like that. And we're talking like changes to the power grid to get.
Correct.
What was the kind of line you guys were bringing in?
Oh yeah, it was at 480, and then we already had double redundancy because we had an automated facility, and then we were talking about bringing in more power to support a fleet of trailers. You could have 7 fuel trucks sitting in your parking lot, just topping off fuel tanks before you could pay for that. I think we had a tip point that it was just over a year of the fuel being close to $5 per gallon before we'd start to see it. But by then you'd start to have maintenance issues, and we didn't even forecast staffing that power.
Yeah, that's the other thing, Don. You mentioned, so the 1,000,000 mile guarantee, which would be amazing, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, that would be amazing. But one of the things that I've learned in my shorter time in the industry than you've had, you've got a lot more experience than me, is these pieces of heavy equipment, they're tearing themselves apart through their daily normal operation. There's just like all kinds of crazy stuff that just happens because of the nature of the beast. These things are massive and they're performing difficult tasks, physically difficult tasks. So we'll have to see what the reality is. They can really make it 1,000,000.
Yeah, there's the jury's still out, but I'm convinced that it's coming, and we need to definitely not stick our head in the sand on it.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Don, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It was cool getting to know you better and hearing your story of the industry. You are clearly I guess if there's a term of well-read in the industry, but well worked, you seem to have done it all, which is pretty amazing. And still at a relatively young age. So very impressive, Don.
I appreciate it, and appreciate the time and being able to get to know you all a little bit better and tell my story. So,
awesome.
So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Don. Thanks for listening to this episode of Diesel Stories Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and check out dieselstories.com for more episodes.